Welcome everyone. Today we'll divide this part in this discussion in three parts. The first one is just a very brief introduction about Malt, so you have a better understanding of what we do and where we operate. Then we'll cover the size of the market in Europe and how it has evolved recently. And what are the forecasts that we expect at Malt. And in the third part, we'll discuss a bit more about the different dynamics in different countries. Why do people become freelancer? Because we noticed doing surveys in different countries that the reason why people become freelancer can vary from one country to another. And the legal environment also from one country to the other can impact the growth of the freelancing economy. So to go through the first part very quickly, we are Malt is a community of a freelancer. We have a community of around almost 300,000 freelancers in Europe, mostly in France, then in Spain and in Germany. And we opened our operations in Belgium and Netherlands yesterday. So if you go on the internet, you can find our websites open malt.nl and malt.be. So we position ourselves in the talent economy. We are a locally based platform only. So clients go on Malt to find local freelancers. They are going to work with them on site. Half of the missions that we are providing happen on the location in the premise of the clients, and half of them are remote. But most of the time, clients and freelancers still meet at the beginning of the project to start their relationship. We do have some projects that are fully remote, but when we open our operations, for example, in Spain, we provide Spanish freelancers for Spanish clients, and similar in every country. We try to avoid offshore to have a different approach than platforms such as Fiverr or Upwork, for instance. So local is the first big differentiation. The other differentiation is that we are a search-based platform, contrary to a job board. We believe that for freelancers, job boards have a lot of bad consequences. The most important one is that public job boards tend to have a reverse auction system that drive prices down because you have 50 or 100 applicants for a position, and only one will win the project. So it tends to promote offshoring or low cost, and we want to avoid that. Instead, we were the first one to introduce a search engine where clients don't publish a job and freelancers cannot see the open positions. Instead, clients are looking for freelancers one by one in our search engine, and they are contacting them to propose them a project. And on average, a client contacts 3 freelancers, not 50. So it's a bit more high value and targeted, like Airbnb. You know, when you are looking for an apartment on Airbnb, you contact only one apartment, and if it's not available, then you contract 1 or 2 other options. But usually, you go for your first favorite option. We are not only a matching platform, we also manage the entire contracting process. So we have a payment and contracting workflow to manage the missions. We built also a freelancer management system for companies to collaborate with other people in their team. They can create favorite list. They can see all the freelancers who have worked in the company in the past. They can share some projects and share some recruitment processes. And we also have a back office for finance and procurement team who need more control over the spendings of their team. Especially big companies. So we work with 30,000 companies in Europe. We work with a lot of SMBs and startups, of course, who need to grow fast, and they need to hire fast. And freelancing is a good option for that. But we also work with some of the largest companies in Europe who are having us competing directly with companies such as Accenture or Atos on IT consulting projects. Maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions on this part, if there are any, before we move on to the next one.
Yeah, actually, there is one. Alice is asking, what's the price for freelancers to be part of the platform?
Yep. So the business model, it's simple. It's a success fee only. So there is you don't have to pay anything to register on the platform and to create your profile. And it's a very open platform. So freelancers' profile are displayed for everyone. Even on the client side, you don't have to pay anything to access the database. The database is free to access. And we display the full name of the freelancer, first name, last name. We believe in transparency and openness. So we are like a freemium model, like LinkedIn. You can browse through the profile of the client, and as a freelancer, you get seen by all potential clients, and we get paid only if you sign a contract on Malt. Then we take a 10% fee for the first 3 months of the project, and after 5 months with the same client, the fee goes down to 5% because we have less value on the as a trusted third party. It's more the management and the admin of the projects. So it's 10% for the first 3 months, then 5%.
And there's a question also about confidentiality.
So confidentiality, I mean, it's like a LinkedIn profile. So if you don't want to appear, you can choose to be not visible in the search engine. Of course, you will get access to less clients, but you can. There's 2 options for you to do that. The first one is you can hide your last name, so you can put only your first name and your last name. But we do ask to have a profile picture. We believe in human connections and human interactions, and we ask freelancers to have a profile picture instead of a logo, etc. It's more qualitative also for clients. The second option is to hide your daily rate. If you don't want to hide to display your daily rate because you want to negotiate with some clients, you can hide your daily rate. And in this case, you will only be found through our automatic machine learning algorithm. Some clients can create a brief, and this briefing, we are going to automatically match it with 10 to 100 freelancers, depending on the complexity of the job. So you will get access to a list of jobs available for you, and you will say, I'm interested, and only then will the client be able to see your profile. So usually high value freelancers with daily rates above 1,000 euro tend to prefer this option because I only get access to clients who are putting a full brief, which tends to be a bit more high value long-term projects than clients who are using the search engine. In this case, it's more qualitative. And so last question, is there a premium option? No, there is no premium option today for freelancers. We don't want some people to be able to pay to be more visible. It would be contrary to what we would like to do, which is to match the client with the best freelancers available. So today there is no premium option. But we do have a boost. If you join the platform for the first 3 months, you have a boost of visibility so that everyone gets some chance to get access to some clients. So moving on to the next part, European freelance market. So we gathered a lot of data on the freelance Europe market over the years. We worked with, so we found data on Eurostar and on local job statistics in every countries. We also worked with Roland Berger, who conducted some surveys and had access to additional data. And we have some rather interesting facts that I'm happy to share today. So first one, a definition, what we call freelancers. There's no official definition of freelancers. So what we took as a baseline is the people who are self-employed in Europe. Then we took people who are self-employed in consulting or in intellectual professions. So we took away farmers, construction, taxi drivers, etc. We took also away the gig economy, so transportation, and then we took away professions which are not B2B or regulated professions. So we don't take into account real estate professionals, healthcare professionals, accountants, lawyers, etc. And this is our definition of freelancers, or basically professionals, independent professionals who are providing intellectual services to companies. And on the right, you have a bit more detail on who are those categories in detail. Where you have the digital talents, of course, the iPros, tech and data, arts and design, marketing and communication. These categories represent 90% of the freelancers that we have on Malt. Okay, so Malt is a platform who provide digital services to companies. We do have some management consultants and interim managers in the business services, and we have very few support functions, finance, HR, legal, purchasing, etc. So these are the ones that we call freelancers, who are, as I said, more on high-skilled intellectual professions for companies. So the number of freelancers in Europe is close to 6 million, compared to 7 million, more than 7 million in the US, when we look at these definitions. And we see right away that the UK is the largest by far market in Europe in number of freelancers, 1.5 million. We often hear that there are more than 3 million independent, 3 million freelancers in the UK, because we take into account some other categories, such as legal or healthcare, etc. But when we look at professional services for companies, it's 1,500, which is almost twice as much as Germany, for instance, and Italy. One figure that could be a bit surprising and not expected is Italy, for instance, which is rather big. Italy is quite a big market for independent workers due to local fiscal environment and law, where employees are taxed significantly more than independent workers, and it's similar in Belgium. Belgium is quite a big market when you compare to the population, as well as the Netherlands. And when we look in terms of value, that's what it gets also a bit more interesting, because in terms of value, the shift and the big numbers tend to move around. We see, for example, Italy moving from the 3rd place to the 5th position due to lower daily rates, as well as a lower number of days on average worked by freelancers. And we see, for instance, that so Germany stays the 2nd, but still quite far from the UK, where we have high daily rates combined with a large number of freelancers. And we see that Netherlands, for instance, is almost as big as France in terms of value, 37 billion euros compared to 42 billion for France. And comparing Europe to the US, we see that Europe is half the size of the market in the US. In terms of split between the different type of categories, in both in Europe and in the States, the digital profiles account for a bit more than the total of the market. Especially in Europe, where almost 60% of the market value is concentrated in digital, and you see that IT in both geographies, IT is the biggest contributor of the in terms of value due to higher daily rate and also a higher number of days worked on average per month. It's similar to business services. So one category that we don't have on Malt today, but we are going to prioritize it next year, is business services, consulting, management consulting, for example, and interim managers, where we tend to have also long missions with high daily rates. That explains also that it's close to IT in terms of volume. And this one is interesting because we try to compare the number of people employed in different sectors between full-time employment, between freelancers, and between employees of intermediaries, such as agencies and IT consulting firms. And we see that in IT and marketing, only 47% of the people working in this field are working for a final customer. More than half of the people in those industries are working either as a freelancer or working for an intermediary agency or IT consulting company, which is huge. But when we compare to what it means also is that if you look at the red part, almost 1/4 of the profiles in digital are today freelancing in Europe, which is also a quite large number and significant number. So 1/4 of digital talents in Europe are freelancing. And when we look at the share of freelancer among the proportion of people who are working as externalized services, we see that 31% in tech are working for consulting companies and agencies, and 22% are working as freelancers, which means that when you hire an external provider as a client in tech, 1 out of 3, this person will be a freelancer. And this needs to be put in line with what people believe on the company side. When you are working for a company and you are hiring, most of your spendings are spent through agencies and IT consulting companies. 90 or 95% of your spendings are spent on external providers, consulting companies. What you don't realize is that actually 1/3 of the people that are sent by the agencies and IT consulting companies are actually freelancers who are subcontracting behind agencies and consulting. But we see that platforms are gaining ground on classic intermediaries, because today, as a freelancer, if you work with the big companies, sometimes you will work directly with your client, but most of the time you will work in subcontracting behind, as we just said, behind a consulting company or an agency. Platforms today represent only 5% of the market. The market, for example, in France is 40 billion, and platforms account for 1.5 billion or 1 billion maximum. So it means that on a 40 billion market, only 2 or 3% of the market in France is managed by platform, which means that the vast majority of the market still happens directly between freelancers and companies, or behind agencies and IT consulting companies. But platforms are gaining ground, and that's why Malt is growing very fast in all countries, because companies are realizing this more and more, and they tend to switch and hiring the freelancers directly through platforms instead of subcontracting. Markups are a bit lower. They get access to directly to the experts. They can choose also who they want to work with. They are not sent one profile. They can choose among different profiles. They can hire a bit faster also than working through classic intermediaries. And we also avoid some legal risks. Sometimes it's in some countries, for example, in Netherlands or in France, it can be riskier to hide your providers and your freelancers behind intermediaries, because you have a risk of hiding the fact that they are freelancers. You don't control the risk anymore, and also for the judge, it can be perceived as if you are trying to hide them behind a shield. For the freelancers, it has also some benefits. Earning more, so that's more for comparison to employees. As a freelancer, we calculated that in France, if you are working as a freelancer instead of being employed by Capgemini, for instance, you can make up to 50% or twice as much as an employee. In some countries where the fiscality is less impacted, for example, like Spain, the difference for employee and freelancer is a bit less, but usually freelancers tend to earn a bit more than their employee counterpart, especially in IT for long projects. The benefits also working for platforms is that they get more freedom and they can choose their projects, and of course it's also payment. Platforms, Malt, but other platforms usually on the market tend to pay freelancers quite fast. For example, on Malt, clients pay us in 60 or 90 days, but we pay freelancers under 5 days. And we mentioned briefly COVID before we started. So it's also indeed something that we saw. A large rebound after the COVID. So this is a number of new projects that started on Malt, and we have a similar trend of people who registered on Malt. During COVID, of course, it has slowed down a bit, because in time of a crisis, people don't take the risk of becoming freelancers. They stay in a full-time job where they can get security of employment. But as soon as the COVID ended, at least the first lockdown, we saw a surge in subscription on the platform. We didn't expect that. We expected it to happen in 1 or 2 years, but 3 months or 6 months after COVID, we saw a large increase of the people joining the platform. I think people realized that, and people challenged a bit also day-to-day job and their position and the role that they have in the company and the impact they had on their life, and started to challenge the choice that they had made to go to become an employee. And the freelancing is a nice option because people, the vast majority of people, become freelancer by choice and for inspirational reason, to get more freedom, freedom to choose your client and not to have a boss, freedom to choose the way you work and from where you work and how much you work every week. And I think COVID is a big accelerator for this shift in the economy. So who are freelancers in Europe? We run, as we said at the beginning, we run a survey every year on the entire database of freelancers on Malt, where we get some interesting insights on why people choose to become freelancer. We also get some insights on how long they work, how many hours they work, and for which type of clients. And so this first slide is questions on the experience and training. And what we see that we can see here that the market in Germany is more mature than the markets in France and in Spain, where freelancers tend to be more experienced. And here the question asked was, for how long have you been freelancing? And we see that freelancers in Germany, on average, that we interviewed, they have been freelancing for 9 years, which is almost twice as much as France and Spain. And we also see the maturity of the market in Germany in another way, by just asking our customers if they are used to working with freelancers. And it's true that in Germany, when we explain what is Malt and we explain that we are a freelancer platform, it rings a bell immediately with our customers. They don't ask any question. For them, it's business as usual to work with freelancers. In France, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I joined the company and we were a small team, we had to explain to companies what was a freelancer and why they were experts, why they were sometimes more professional than employees from consulting firm. And now the market has changed. The market is more mature, and we have some big companies who are asking us, who are listing a freelancer platform at the same level than IT consulting company. In Spain, we are not that here. And we are still explaining to customers what are freelancers, and the market is less mature also in the number of competitors. In Spain, we are the only freelancer platform, or maybe there are 1 or 2 small platforms, while in France, there is 1 new platform every month, and in Germany, there are already 50 platforms. So the maturity of the market can be assessed in a different way, but everything converged on the fact that Germany is much more mature than France, and Spain is a bit lagging behind. What is interesting also is the training. 4 to 5 hours per week is spent on training for freelancers that we have interviewed in the different countries, which is huge when you compare it to the training that employees get. It's 4 or 5 times more than what employee gets. And it's often a challenge that we get from clients. Yes, but employees of Capgemini, employees of Accenture, they have trainings, they get trained on their job, but it's the contrary. As a freelancer, you have to be trained, and you have to train yourself because your employment depends on it, and they tend to be more on top of that than their employees' counterparts. In Germany, we also notice that it's more likely for freelancers to work at the client office. That's another view on the maturity of the market. 40% of the projects for German freelancers take place at the client office. So this was done before COVID, of course. And in Spain, it's only 15% of the projects who are done at the client office. And we really feel that at Malt. It's hard for us to find a freelancer who is ready to work on site for a project of more than 3 months at the client's office. But this is what the large companies are requesting. So we see a misalignment between what large companies are requesting in Spain and what freelancers are ready to give. And it's also a sign that the market is a bit less mature. And freelancers, when we ask freelancers in Spain, why do you choose to become freelancer? Most of them answer, I want to choose from where I work from and how long I want to work for every week. When you ask the same question in Germany, freelancers tend to answer that they want to choose their projects and want to get a higher, better payroll. So it's again a sign of a different level of maturity, and the reason also why people tend to choose freelancing. Here is what I just mentioned on the reasons to become freelancers. So we see that in Spain compared to Germany, people choose to become freelancer for the workplace, contrary to Germany. And the third item, mission choice, usually, and in Germany, it's the main reason to become freelancer is to choose a project, while it's only the third reason in Spain. And finally, this one is interesting because I was wondering why we had such a big difference between Germany and Spain in terms of daily rate. If you ask a 5 years experience mobile developer in Spain, his daily rate, it will be around 200 and 250 for 5 years experience as a mobile developer. In France, it will be 500, 600 euro, and in Germany, it will be closer to 800 euro. So it's almost 4 times the daily rate in Germany than in Spain. And the difference in the salary for employed people, it's not 4 times. It could be twice the salary, and even twice is already generous, but not 4 times. And we find a correlation between the unemployment rate and the difference, the gap between employees and freelancers in each countries. In Germany, where we have a low unemployment rate, 3%, the gap between employees and freelancers is higher in favor of freelancers. So here what we mean, the red line, it's the salary difference between France and Germany. So we see that salaries in Germany are 27% higher than in France. And it's in Spain, they are only 75% of French salaries. And then we compare in the blue line the same difference with France on the daily rate of freelancers. And we see the daily rates of freelancers are 35% higher in Germany. And they are half those of France. So, of course, unemployment drives daily rate because it's a simple supply and demand balance in the market. While you have a long-term effect and a long-term balance on the salaries, because it's more regulated and you have more volume. On freelancers' daily rate, you have a bit more, I would say, market effect and flexibility. And we also saw that during the COVID, because right in the middle of the lockdown, consulting companies had a lot of people on the payroll that they needed to staff, so they tended to lower the prices immediately, which led to a surplus of providers and talents on the market, for example, in IT. And we saw a drop in the prices in all countries during the lockdown because freelancers wanted to find more projects, which of course did not happen on the employment package.